happening now. We want to welcome our viewers from across the United States and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room. Good morning, good day, good evening. This is EdTech Situation Room, episode number 305 for September 13th, 2023. My name is Jason Neiffer, and I am the Executive Director of Montana Digital Academy, which is Montana State Virtual School located on the beautiful University of Montana campus, located right here in Missoula, Montana, the crown of Western Montana. And joining me tonight, as always, good evening, Dr. Wesley Fryer. How are you tonight, sir?
Good evening, Jason. I am great, and I am not quite as busy as you these days, it doesn't sound like, but I am a middle school STEM teacher at Providence Day School in Charlotte, North Carolina, and enjoying the, I don't know, what is it, maybe fourth week of school, something like that. Getting, feeling like we're well underway. So I'm joining you from Matthews, North Carolina, and I am excited because we've had some big events. We got a big court case that started, and Apple had a few things to say this week. So I'm sure we're going to talk about that along with some other things.
Well, that sounds great. If you're new to the show, first of all, welcome to the EdTech Situation Room. But Wes and I get together once a week on Wednesday nights and take a look at the headlines and kind of shoot them through the Edu prism in hopes of maybe providing some insight or at least some entertaining conversation about it. You can always check out our links at our website, edtechsr.com/links. Where you can see our second massive Google document. We've been doing this for quite some time now, 305 episodes. Wow. And there's always the links we cover, and then usually a lot of leftover links that we didn't get a chance to cover. So feel free to check that out to kind of see what's been swimming around our brains. Tonight we'll have some AI news, Apple news, our category called Tech Correction, social media news, some space news, some software updates, and then finally our Geeks of the Week. Dr. Fryer, we would not be the Apple fanboys we are if we did not start with Apple news, so I would prefer to start there. So I guess your initial impression, sir, of, by the way, I haven't had a chance to watch the event yet. In fact, I didn't even remember yesterday until the end of the day that the event was happening, and although there are no real surprises there, what are your thoughts on the iPhone 15?
So I watched about a third of the keynote yesterday, and didn't get through all of the iPhone parts. But I think the USB-C connector is just fantastic news. We've talked on the show before. It was probably a good 4 or 5 years ago that I was beta testing a MacBook Air, I guess Pro, that had the USB-C, and just loved it, because I didn't have to have another connector. And I think we can thank our friends in Europe for the regulatory pressure on Apple for this. And I think we probably called this on the show too, to say, as Europe goes with this and Apple, we're going to see the rest of, Apple land in North America and elsewhere go as well. So I think that is the best and most exciting thing that I heard. Every iPhone since 2012 has used Lightning until now. I did drop a Wired article in. Everything Apple announced that was the iPhone is finally coming to USB-C. Well, here's what that means. So you've talked in the past about the importance of being aware of, charging amps and, the differences between USB-C connectors. And I think that's still going to be true. But the European Union, according to the article, passed a law in 2022, requiring phones, tablets, and cameras sold in the region to come equipped with a USB-C port by the end of 2024. And so those of us that have been using USB-C for a while, I miss the break-off cable on the Mac laptops. I think I actually at least one time at some kind of an event did have a laptop, not just break away, and those MagSafe chargers, I guess is what they're called. I do miss that. But USB-C is becoming a standard, and I think it's fantastic. So what are your thoughts?
Well, first, I was delighted last night to remember that I am a T-Mobile customer, and a couple of years ago, I enrolled in a program that was only available for 2 months, apparently called Update Forever. And so I'll be getting an $800 credit over 2 years to upgrade to a new phone, and so I'll get that in perpetuity. And so that's well, until they cancel the program, of course. But I'm really excited about that because it means I will be upgrading to an iPhone 15. And for me, I just really like the colors, the titanium colors look really nice. I'm in absolute love with the light blue and light gray iPhones. The light green. I'm sorry, the light gray green one, which wasn't available in the 14. Otherwise, I'm sorry, this is a 13. Wasn't available in the 13. Otherwise, I would have picked up that beautiful kind of mint green color that they had in the iPhone 12. But this is the best phone I've owned without exception. And one of the ways you know that is because, I like playing with phones and technology. And one of the things I've never had to do with this phone is wipe it and start over again. And I felt like that was something that was always something I had to do when I was on Android and even with earlier iPhones. But the MagSafe connector on the back of this and the USB Type C connector, and they did have some. They did get rid of the physical mute switch, which, to be frank, I'm not wild about that because that's something I use pretty frequently as I go in and out of presentations and such. But really exciting news. And so I think I have to wait like 2 weeks before my 2 years kicks up since I've purchased my 13, but I will be a consumer for the 15 Pro is likely what I will go for. And it's exciting news. And the main reason why I would update right now is not just because, I'm a guy that updates frequently. It's because my battery is tanking, and it's got 89% battery health right now, which I think is pretty impressive. It only lost 11% in the past 2 years. And the MagSafe battery packs you can buy really make that much less of an issue because it's super easy now just to pop a battery on the back of that phone. I carry one around in my day bag with me. But yeah, really exciting stuff announced yesterday in regards to the phone.
Hey, and shout out to my dad who is there. And, we've said this before on the show, when new phones come out, the used phones get less expensive. And so if you are using an older phone, the arrival of new iPhones is a good thing. But, even if you're thinking you don't need, and probably most of us don't need the latest and greatest, although I will say having the iPhone, 13, I think is what I've had with 5G connectivity. I mean, it's been phenomenal. The camera's been amazing, and the ability to stream on 5G. Was able to do a live stream at an Air Force Academy parade about a month ago, and anyway, it is really nice. But I've read that Apple, is not happy as all cell phone manufacturers, that people aren't upgrading as often. But that's also a function of return on investment and just how long these things last. So kudos to you for having a plan that's going to allow you to do those more frequent upgrades. And but that's, I think, going to be a bit unusual. A lot of folks are going to be continuing to use older devices, and so check out Swappa. There's other places that you like to buy, but that's probably what we'll recommend. And our son is actually getting married at the end of the month, and I think we'll probably take him off of our cellular plan at last.
Time to cut the iPhone string.
That's right. But still have several others in our family, 4 of us that we're responsible. Well, I don't know how, when your kids are 20 and 22, do you still buy them iPhones? Maybe you do, but anyway, we'll still be talking about that and looking at upgrades. And I think that probably not the latest and the greatest, but some newer upgrades are going to be good. So the other thing that article mentions that people may wonder about is MagSafe charging, which is the wireless charging that I think with iPhone 12, perhaps it started being able to do. That's all separate, and that's going to continue as well. Yep. And so it's great that Apple has both, but USB-C and as well as power has the ability to do data transfer just like the Lightning cable. Not that a lot of us are transferring data, via a cable these days. That's usually all happening wirelessly through iCloud backups and that kind of thing. But yeah, good news. Was there anything else with the iPhone that seemed to excite you? I think I had seen previews from the WWDC in the summer about iOS, and there's some cool features that iOS is going to have. I will say this, and I say this every time. watch the beginning opening video,
Yeah.
if nothing else, because Apple always just does an amazing job. And what they open up with in this year's event was just a real tear-jerking, emotional recount of people's whose lives have been saved by the iPhone, whether that's because or the Apple Watch or the combination thereof. So, detecting an irregular heartbeat,
Yep.
identifying a tumor, people who called SOS, who were able to make an emergency call via satellite, thanks to the iPhone 14's ability to connect directly to the satellite. It really, for a technology company, and what a great way to be able to start to say, we don't just change people's lives, we literally save people's
Yeah.
lives. And that sweet spot for Apple, especially with the watch, with health and fitness, it's a fantastic sweet spot to be in. And so anyway, just if nothing else, I just encourage people to watch the beginning of the presentation. The whole thing is really always a tour de force of amazing storytelling and masterful, marketing, and just it defines, I think, the best of the best. But when it comes to just thinking about telling stories with video, Apple does that really well. So watch the beginning.
The other thing I would note is, just to go back on the USB-C thing for a moment. I obsess about charging. I have a bit of a personality in that way, and this is one of the ways I manifest. But it's been really great the last 6 months. The way I know that I'm starting to get past the pandemic is because of the things that I used to obsess over pre-pandemic are now becoming my, living with the pandemic stuff. So I carry around, I was going to actually bring it upstairs for the podcast tonight, but I carry an extremely well curated set of cables in my daily carry bag, right? And I know exactly what's in there. I know exactly what they power and how much watts that they have. But in addition to that, I mean, I do have a lot of Apple USB-C bricks, and they're bricks, right? Like, they're heavy, and there are more svelte ones you could buy now from a variety of very reputable vendors that are legit. But I bought a number of these used over the last couple of years, in some cases for as little as $10. And, even if you have, they range from 61 watts up to 140 watts. And, they're certainly going to charge an iPhone pretty darn quickly, but these have been really great for me. And also my curated set of cables. The other advantage of updating to the iPhone 15, I still do have a couple of devices that use Lightning, an older iPad that uses Lightning, and also my AirPods use Lightning. I'm not really in the space to update AirPod probably for at least another generation of AirPod Pros. But the charging piece is just great, and you can really use any charger on USB-C devices. It just depends on speed, really. And
you're not gonna damage it.
Don't buy super cheap stuff, right? Like, don't buy I would avoid the stuff at the line at the drugstore, right? The $11 cables that are basically falling apart. But if it's a reputable brand name, Belkin, Anchor, Oddkey, there's several really well-rated stuff on eBay. There's some fancy stuff you can get. Even if you're using an old iPhone charger from the early days, and you have like an Anchor traditional USB to USB-C, that's going to charge your MacBook. It's going to do it really slowly, right? And it may not be enough so that you can actively use it, and it will still charge, but that's an effective strategy, and you can definitely do that. And I just keep thinking about, every time I can't think of a time that I've ever been without a charger or a cable when I travel, because again, I'm obsessive about cables and charging. But, if you get stuck at a hotel and you don't have something for your phone, probably the stuff in the box at the desk of people left over is probably going to be good enough to get you through. And you could carry the one charger for your laptop and your phone, or your tablet and your phone, or in my case, all three. And I think that's a really great, really, really great thing.
Having watched the first third of the Apple event, I will make a couple comments about the watch. And I'm still, sporting the third generation. The new watch, golly, it's like 2,000 nits, and then there's is it called a pro version? Whatever, it's the high end version of the watch that's 3,000. I mean, the brightness on that thing, and it'll go down to 1 nit. It is absolutely stunning. But probably the coolest thing, did you see this with the fingers? Because
Yes.
the way that the accelerometers and all the sensors and everything, you don't have to have two hands in order to operate it, and so you can just do this in order to click things, answer calls, hang up calls, turn off alarms, things like that. So yeah, I think, I don't know. With something like a watch, I'm used to having it forever and never changing it. Well, this isn't just a watch. This is a computer. So
Yeah.
I think I am going to, pardon me, I am going to need to think about an upgrade path with that. But again, probably not to, jump into the latest and greatest, but these are always incremental improvements. But when you see how stunningly powerful and amazing they are, it's just incredible. So and again, if people haven't tried and experienced the unifying functionality of the devices, using the watch with the phone, with the computer, continuity, being able to move things between it, it really is spectacular. So I'm personally very happy to see Apple doing well. I'm glad to see the products continuing to update. And I'm glad to see USB coming to be the standard, because, Apple's notorious for having all kinds of chargers required for different devices, and an industry standard is, I think, a welcome change.
Absolutely. And I make one other note. We talked about this in past episodes, but you can also get these really great third-party kind of proto MagSafe adapters for USB-C, and I use these pretty frequently, especially with laptops. MagSafe is amazing on a laptop, because there are plenty of times in my life I might have lost a laptop to a rogue kick to a cable. But the cool thing about these is that, and again, you want to look for reviews and make sure they're not cheap junk, which there is plenty of cheap junk, everywhere on places like Amazon. But you can add a MagSafe functionality really simply to your iPhone, for example, especially if you're not someone like me and you just have a couple of cables and not, a couple of collections of cables. But, USB-C is just such a great standard, and it's still a little mystifying because there are so many wattages and amperages and cables, and some of them do data and some of them don't do data, and yada yada yada. But yeah, I think it's a great move, and it would be nice to be able to carry around just a USB-C charger only.
One other thing I'll comment on, another thing that's worth seeing is there's a skit kind of partway, I don't know, it's maybe a fourth of the way through the video. I don't remember exactly when, but Octavia Spencer is cast as Mother Nature, and there's a whole skit about Apple and their progress towards carbon neutrality. And so the Apple Watch is the first Apple Watch, I think, to be carbon neutral. But Apple's achieved some phenomenal. Is it net zero, or what's it? I don't know what's it called when you don't. You're able
carbon
to
neutral.
Is it carbon neutral? Okay, but it's not only for the product, but like their entire facility. The UFO looking building that they are in now in Cupertino. Anyway, it's pretty impressive. She comes off as very, very gruff and almost impossible to impress, but it's funny, it's clever, but it's also a pretty stunning. I think Apple's actually doing really well when it comes to that, and I'd love to see more companies follow suit. And I don't think Apple is going to be solving the climate crisis, but you do wonder if the AI that is coming out of these big tech companies is not going to bear some fruit when it comes to larger climate crisis kinds of issues. So anyway, that was fun, and I thought it was well done and made some important points about how they've advanced their products in terms of their sensitivity to the environment.
Awesome. Okay, do you want to cover that iPhone 12 article quickly?
Yeah, I was going to say we're on Apple, so let's talk about this. This is kind of weird. This is the BBC News today on September 12th. France halts iPhone 12 sales over radiation levels. Now, I remember when I worked for AT&T for a couple years, I'd heard a little bit about this kind of thing in terms of, people who claimed the radiation that was coming from cell phones was very damaging and there would be lawsuits and problems, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, France had someone measure the iPhone 12, and France has now announced that if Apple can't resolve this issue via a software update, it must, quote, recall every iPhone 12 ever sold in the country, in France. The World Health Organization has previously sought to allay fears about radiation emitted by mobile phones. It says there's no evidence to conclude that exposure to low-level electromagnetic fields is harmful to humans. And the article explains that there's two different ways. Sorry, my dog is dropping its bone around the room. There are two different ways that they measure this. And so one of them is when it's right up to, your face. And then I guess one is when it's at more of a distance. And so anyway, on one of those tests, it exceeded the quote specific absorption rate, the SAR. And they said that in France, they found it was above what was legally allowed. Apple is expected to respond within 2 weeks. So anyway, that'll be interesting to see what happens. But I don't know. It's just weird. I don't know if they had, if that was faulty equipment, if they had a weird iPhone, or if they're onto something. But I would just be totally shocked because Apple, make sure that they comply with all those kinds of legal requirements and things like that. So weird.
Yeah, totally. And also I one of the things I appreciate and also kind of scratch my head sometimes about our friends in the EU is that they're just not afraid to walk up to a corporation, tap them on the shoulder, and give them a nice punch. And I just don't think we get that kind of protections here in the good old USA.
No, we probably don't. So. All right. Well, you want to talk a little Google tech correction before we jump into AI tonight?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Well, NPR yesterday had an article, United States takes on Google in biggest tech monopoly trial of the 21st century. And in terms of just kind of recounting details of the trial, which got underway, I think, today in earnest, it's a good article. Basically, the allegation by the U.S. Justice Department is that Google has abused its power as a monopoly to dominate the search engine business. And it recounts how Google has, quote, illegally orchestrated its business dealings. So it's the first search engine to appear on people's browsers. The former Attorney General William Barr says the lawsuit strikes at the heart of Google's grip over the internet for millions of American consumers, advertisers, small business, and entrepreneurs beholden to an unlawful monopolist. Now, that was what Barr said back in October of 2020, almost 3 years ago, when that was filed. So there's been millions of pages, lots of depositions. The case is going to trial. But I've got some really strong opinions about this. But what are your thoughts? Any views on it, or do you want me to chime in with mine before you?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that I wish we could not do this through the courts, is what I would say, right? Like, I don't know. I don't always agree with what people call things like monopolistic activity, right? But I also feel like in absence of regulation, the only places to do this is the courts. And I don't know if the courts is the best tool, but you, sir, should rant away.
Okay. So let's begin with the Ars Technica article today. And I had heard this earlier. The headline, Judge in U.S. versus Google trial didn't know if Firefox is a browser or a search engine, which sounds like maybe one of my sixth graders in my media literacy class. And I would just say, if you're the judge in the trial and you don't know the difference between a search engine and a browser, you're disqualified. So this trial is not going to have a jury. This judge who doesn't know the difference or didn't, yesterday between a browser and a search engine is going to be the one, Jason's gone dark, who is going to decide this. That is obscenely ridiculous. And so that's point one. Point two, I really, really like this op-ed. Okay. This is from the USA today on September 12th. And the headline is, just because Americans love Google doesn't make it a monopoly. Biden lawsuit goes too far. And the author here is Barbara Comstock, a former congresswoman and delegate from Virginia, senior advisor at Baker Davison, and she was a senior Justice Department official during the Bush administration. I basically agree 100% with what she has to say here. This is being positioned by the Department of Justice. And again, this thing got filed 3 years ago as like a Microsoft case, right? She points out this is way, way different than Microsoft because Google has not prohibited anybody from choosing a different search engine. In fact, I think it was in this article, or it might have been in another one. In Europe, because again, they regulatorily, as you point out, are sort of less reticent to, come throw a punch at a tech company, required Google to, in the startup process for phones and Android, allow people to choose, so not to have a default. Well, over 90% of Europeans still chose Google. So see, that's not happening because Google's paying money. It's happening because Google is freaking awesome. And the number one search query on Microsoft Bing is, wait for it, Google. Okay. It's because Google rocks. And if you've listened to our show for a while, you're not surprised that Jason and I are both Apple fanboys, but we pretty much love Google and, use the Google suite all the time. And so I think, I put this under tech correction because this is what this is. This is a regulatory attempt to rein in big tech and to try to do something, regulatory wise to strike back at big tech. But this is the wrong big tech to be trying to take a shot at. And so I really hope that this judge can be educated, number one, about the difference between a freaking search engine and a browser, which is like, that is basic core. If you don't understand that, I really fear for you as someone who's going to try to understand the technology world. But I do hope that the lawyers who are involved are going to be able to educate the judge to the point where they're going to be able to see that being really, really good. And there's another analogy to this. We don't call a company that pays for eye level right when you walk in the supermarket or the grocery store, positioning of products. We don't call that a monopoly. We call that paying for product placement. And we recognize that you can do that. There are plenty of competitors that are in the marketplace. I think when Firefox elevated DuckDuckGo as a default browser, they had a backlash. People got upset, And so Google is a fantastic search engine. We could talk about the ad business, and I think that would be a different conversation. And I don't know if this court case, and I haven't read enough, goes into that, but I think it's basically about being a search engine and paying, to be the default search engine. But there's plenty of choices. People can choose. Back in the day, Microsoft was not allowing, they were bundling Internet Explorer, right? And they were saying and making it impossible to remove Internet Explorer. They were saying it was core to Windows, and it was very monopolistic and anti-competitive. So I see this as very, very different. I hope the judge can be educated. I think it's unfortunate that the Biden administration is choosing to pursue this avenue with big tech. Again, it's been 3 years in the making. And unfortunately, this is going to cost Google a lot of money, and it's going to go on and on. But hopefully, at the end of the day, we're going to be able to recognize that, hey, but just as that editorial says, being really, really good and having lots of people choose you and then paying to, have good product placement, that doesn't make it a monopoly. So yeah, that would be my opinion. Just a little bit of a strong one.
So the idea that the judge didn't know that Firefox was a browser, and that's also part of the problem with regulation too, right? Is that, as much as I know that people bristle at bureaucrats, writing regulations and over-regulating, but if you have experts, that's what they're for, right? Like, you are able to do that. It's one of the things I love about the folks that are in the EdTech office at the Department of Education right now, is they're people that I know EdTech. It's the work they've been doing the last couple of years has been really great. And I think we just need to be very thoughtful about, how I think we should be regulating tech more. I do think there's maybe some monopolistic behaviors going on. And the thing about, Google and search is that I'm concerned about other parts of Google. I'm not concerned about the search part of it, right? Like, I feel like it's been generally very accurate for me. And I've tried to move to Bing and I've tried to move to DuckDuckGo. just as a thought experiment. And then, I would get annoyed and go back to Google. And, it's a little bit baby duck syndrome, right? Because I've been using it for literally 25 years. So that's a little bit of it. But yeah, I will see. But it makes things really challenging to try to follow, and also to try to figure out where we plug into all these tools too. And very concerned.
The other thing to note, besides the fact that this judge is going to rule and there's no jury involved, is that apparently the judge is going to be able to do all kinds of things, from issue fines to even break the company up and require that it restructure. So there's a lot of money that's being spent. There's a lot of political capital that's being spent on this. So I think this is something that the government is trying in earnest to win, but I do think it's misplaced, and I think it's so unfortunate, especially when, we mentioned the Center for Humane Technology founder Tristan Harris's conversation with Larry Lessig on his Other Way podcast, but talking about AI, talking about our first contact with social media leading to no regulation. This is sort of like, I don't know, just going back in time 10 or 15 years and saying, hey, let's file a lawsuit. Yeah. There are much more important and glaring issues and search and other things. It's not that there are no concerns about Google and its behavior, but having a fantastic search engine that over 90% of people in the world prefer, or at least I should say the English speaking world, but even in other countries, I think Google is pretty dominant. So anyway, it's big news. We're going to hear about it. And hopefully we're not just going to hear more of these articles that confirm that these old people, we're old ourselves, but anyway, we have a lot of very old elected officials. And I'm not saying that old people aren't wise, but we need to have savvy folks who have a better understanding of technology than we've certainly seen represented in Washington at some former hearings where we had big tech companies and tech CEOs, testifying, being the ones who are regulating. And so, anyway, we'll see.
Sigh. Yes, is my answer to that. So
that's right.
Okay, should we talk about AI?
Let's do a social media article first, and then we'll
go ahead.
Okay, Washington Post yesterday. Threads blocks searches related to COVID and vaccines as cases rise. And so this is a gift link. As we've talked about in the past, we are living in a very fractured social media environment. There is no one single sort of, successor to X, which is, the website formerly known as Twitter. And so Threads is the Twitter-like clone that Meta or Facebook, hey, let's see if the judge can keep up with all those names, that they put out. So one of the things that Zuckerberg, owner of Meta or whatever, CEO of Meta and controller of Threads, has said is that he doesn't want it to be political and polarizing. But rather than use AI and these powerful, algorithms and functionality, they've just flat out blocked the searches to COVID and long COVID. And it's not a matter of labeling it. It's a matter of you just can't see those searches. And so that was yesterday. I haven't read an update, but a lot of backlash to this. And I think it shows the difficulty of moderating social media content. But the thing is, Threads didn't have a search feature. And so it rolled it out. And then within like 24 or 48 hours, people realize, hey, I can't even search for the word COVID to see if the CDC has said something or anybody else has said anything about COVID at all. And as the headline notes there, that's happening as COVID cases are on the rise. And we've been, told that everyone needs to get another vaccine, et cetera. So I don't think that bodes very well for Threads. However, I will say I'm continuing to use Threads and post on it, as well as Blue Sky and, the X website and these other places. But it is a very fractured environment. And that doesn't seem to, be a real vote of confidence that, Threads is here to take over where Twitter left off. I'm not very confident of that.
Well, and it's funny too, because I think we've talked about this before, but I'm spending a lot more time on LinkedIn than I ever have. And it's a different environment. The sharing of articles isn't necessarily as prominent. And Oh, and if they are usually, writing a paragraph or two of thoughts about it, it seems to get more response. But I've had a lot of activity on there lately, and my activity gets me connections to people, right? In a way that I can't say was really all that true about Twitter in a long time, actually, 5 or 6 years minimum. But yeah, I don't think Twitter's dead. What I do think, though, is that clearly Twitter is moving elsewhere. I don't know if it's LinkedIn or elsewhere, but clearly Twitter is leaving.
Well, I think we can give everyone a strong piece of advice, and that is that if you don't have a current, up-to-date, robust profile on LinkedIn as a professional, you should do that. It's been the professional social network for a long time. I had really neglected it because I was finding lots of benefit, in Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and other places. But like you, I am posting there regularly. I am seeing articles there regularly. I appreciate things that folks are sharing. And that's one of the things that I really benefit from with social media is the chance to serendipitously encounter, links and news and tips and apps and things that help me, that help me do my job as a teacher, that inform me as a citizen, and that I just enjoy. And so I have been pleasantly surprised. And one of the things, and I don't know who's doing this, but lists are important. So I mean, I've been following, of course I follow you, and I've seen some of the things that you've been doing, Susan Bearden. I've been following Free Tech for Teachers.
Richard Byrne.
Richard, who's actually, I guess, going to law school. Did you see that? Do you follow him?
No, that's interesting.
He's like sold his Free Tech for Teachers. He was going to do that before the pandemic, then the pandemic hit, but yeah, I think he's going to law school. Good for him. So anyway, it's not the huge marketplace of people that Twitter has been, but it still is a wonderful place to be able to connect. So I would definitely encourage every educator and honestly every professional, if you're not utilizing LinkedIn, make sure you have an updated profile there, but you might give it a try and kind of see how you find the sharing. It does depend on the folks that you view, and the algorithm is different, but it's been good for me as well. And shout out to whoever our other live viewer is. If you want to say hi and let us know, we're glad you're here. By the way, I'm pretending like I live in Wyoming today. So I have a new YouTube video. Jason, shares this wonderful XSplit VCam software. So I've got my iPhone 13, sitting above my old 27-inch iMac here. But anyway, it lets me put whatever YouTube video I would like. And I found a very nice video of panoramic mountain scenes from Montana. So I'm sure my father has noticed the Tetons and other beautiful sights from around the state.
Well, should we talk a little bit about AI?
Please do, sir. And correct me if I'm wrong. You are now the officially foremost expert on AI in the state of Montana?
Highly unlikely.
By presentation. How many presentations?
About it
how many formal presentations have you given about AI in the last couple of months, Dr. Neiffer?
Hey, shout out to Eric. He's our other viewer.
Awesome,
you,
Eric.
Good to see you. I think I'm on 12 or 13 now, and a webinar tomorrow, and
free webinar, right?
Free webinar tomorrow. Go to Twitter for details, and interesting stuff going on in that space. One thing I would talk about for just a second, and it's an older article that I want to kick up because I think it's really really important stuff. Ethan Mullick, the professor from the Wharton School, who is doing some really amazing things. He shared an article. Well, no, that's now.
I was gonna say that's the Shutterly article, the In Praise of Boring.
Well, I could have swore that also Mr. Mullick had that as well. Maybe he just shared it. So sorry. Well, no, there is an article called. Oh, it's because I was using the auto link thing. Okay. Let me correct my link. But Ethan Mullick is the professor from the Wharton School that's doing really great things with trying to kind of prepare people for this and talk about it in an education space. And he had this great article on his blog called One Useful Thing that I think that I think is really important to remember. And one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about in regards to AI is that we should not get too charmed by the wonder of it in order to ignore the power it gives people for processing data. Right. And so, as an example of that, I think last week I had shared my workflow for taking large documents like transcripts of legislative hearings and turning it into a useful piece. And I have, tweaked that. There's a lot of interim legislative hearings going on in Montana this week. In fact, I have a text processing going on in the background right now. And I just noticed that my transcribe on Microsoft Word is errored out again, but I have a lot going on this week, and I've listened as much as I could to the hearings live. But then the Montana legislature posts those videos and audio clips, or not clips, but archives of the meetings afterwards. And I did a really cool thing last week where I uploaded it was a 6-hour meeting that it would have been very, very, very challenging to pay attention to 6 hours. So then I've been scrubbing and going back and forth and probably missed something, but I did my workflow, which is to grab the audio, upload it to Word Online, which allows you to create a transcript of that. So it transcribes the audio. I download it as a Word document. I upload it to Claude 2, and then I can ask Claude 2 questions. And so now and the demo I showed off last Friday, I spoke at the College of Education at the University of Montana on this. One of the things that I was able to do is upload the transcript. I have a script that I use now in Text Expander, which is basically my name, or that I'm the executive director of the Montana Digital Academy. Here are the things I'm interested in. Can you and let me I can actually bring this up. My particular text expansion says
would you like to write a guest blog for me on my blog about this?
Yes, I would, as a matter of fact.
I think you should, because you don't have a current blog. I think you need to get this out, because what you're doing right now is a phenomenally transformative use of the AI. And,
right.
and to your point with Moloch, what a great way to be able to wield that power to bring data and information and just current things that you need to potentially act on to your attention.
And so, to be clear, I'm using the free version of Claude, and I don't know if we talked about this last week, but Claude now has a paid tier.
Oh, I didn't know that. No.
Yeah, it's $20 a month, same as ChatGPT, and I'm purchasing both right now because I'm that guy. But at some point, if I had to choose, I'd probably choose Claude over ChatGPT. And also, I'm also a user of Poe.com. I'm not sure if I talked about that. I think I talked about it last week, but you can get access to all of these models, the advanced version, on Poe.com for $20 a month too. So if I were to narrow down to one, I would just pick Poe. But here's my text expansion script. As the executive director of the Montana State Virtual Program, Montana Digital Academy, I'm interested in virtual education policies, technologies, and best practices for K-12 education. I'm also focused on the development of study and online learning skills for students, educational technology, AI in education, and social studies and humanities education. Please provide a summary of this document that highlights 5 to 10 major points most relevant to my role and context. Please also identify what this document is, along with the context of the document, and then I say thank you because I try to be nice.
I do too. They're gonna be our overlords. So let's just start getting polite here.
Well, that's exactly how I feel about it as well. And so I did this last week, right, in a very real thing. I'll tell you a frustration I have here in a moment, but kind of let me tell you what happened next. So the document rendered accurately, and let's see here. It told me this appears to be a legislative hearing on so-and-so date, and the following topics were talked about. And a couple of times it gave me some additional context. As a virtual school administrator, you'd probably be interested in this for this reason or that reason. And then it went through, and then at the end I said, was my program, Montana Digital Academy specifically mentioned? It says yes, it was mentioned twice. and it picked up 2 people. It mentioned their name, mentioned who they were, made the comment. Someone did it as part of testimony, and someone did it as part of public comment. By the way, I never listen to the public comment, so it's something I would have missed anyways. And then I said,
Wow.
great, what timestamps are those at? And because I copy and pasted the timestamps in there too, which is what Word creates, it gave me the exact timestamp. So I was able to scrub right to that.
That
That
is phenomenal.
is a game changer, right? And for everyone that has to deal with, a lot of stuff that, is certainly germane to your job, but not at the extent of listening to 7 hours of testimony, that's pretty amazing.
You should write that article and sell it to Tech Learning, or I don't know what other journals. I'm not kidding. I mean, I think that is phenomenal. If folks remember back in the day when Google Alerts came out, I mean, that was a transformative thing to be able to put the name of your school or your name or your child's name or whatever, and then have an alert sent to you whenever that was mentioned. But this is next level.
Yeah. So this notion that, AI can do some really amazing things, and that we should not be, well, the way I keep thinking about it is that let's not be too charmed by the fancy stuff, right? Like, I'm guilty of spending hour upon hour on Midjourney. A colleague of mine at work shared with me my Geek of the Week today that is pretty funny and amazing. That would be a real time suck. Ideogram continues to be an amazing image generation tool. I love playing with that too. But in the end, my 8 hours a day at work is pretty intense. And if I can use this to help make me more effective at keeping track of a large amount of kind of spinning plates, that makes me better at my job. And who spins plates more than school teachers and school administrators? And that's where I think we can't get too charmed by the wonder of this. And also, we can't, there's clearly instructional conversations we need to have about this, but let's not let that get in the way to have these technologies help us do our jobs better.
So we got about 15 minutes. Do you want to go ahead and hit a few more of those AI articles, kind of as sort of quick hits? Because some of those we've carried forward, I think, from some past weeks, or whatever. We don't have to, but there's some pretty good ones there. And I'll make a comment. I don't have it as a Geek of the Week, but it is tied to my Geek of the Week. But Eric Kurtz, shout out to Eric, phenomenal Google using educator, has some excellent webinars that are free about AI. Just watched one of those for my personal professional development today. And he pointed out on the question of AI detectors, which have gotten some news, that ChatGPT had their own and they discontinued it because they were no longer able to have confidence in its ability to detect whether or not someone was using AI or not. And so anyway, you have an article in there from the Hetchinger report. But anyway, whatever you want to, whatever you
sure.
Want to
there's one I want to talk about in a little more detail, but let me talk about that full GPT detector one. You pronounce it better than I do. The Hetchinger report. They released some data that where they cite a group of experiments by Stanford University, and this paper was published in July 2023. And in essence, they say that there's really not. There are the claims of GPT detectors being 99% accurate are often taken at face value by a broader audience, which is misleading. And the scientists began generating 31 counterfeit college admissions essays using GPT 3.5, so not even the newest model, right? The free version. 2 of the 7 detectors caught all 31 counterfeits. So, that doesn't mean that it's only X% effective, but it really spans the different pieces. But it mentions, for example, that GPT-0 and 0GPT got 100% of that, but I'm able to regularly fool GPT-0 and 0GPT. And for example, Claude doesn't get picked up at all by a lot of these. And also, I put my own writing into it quite a bit, and it surprisingly gives false positives. And it's no longer making big broad statements, like it just talks about likelihoods and not, this is AI and this is not. That helps, but I still think we spend too much time, really relying on these tools, and I'm just not sure if you can.
And I think that goes to where we need to focus on having guidelines for uses of AI,
Yes.
asking students to document in detail their use, and recognize that these tools today are augmentation tools for our cognitive capabilities. And those are going to continue unless something incredibly dystopian happens. And, I don't foresee our connected society having AI that's going to be less powerful than what we have today. And having now used this for several months,
Yeah.
and experiencing on, if not a daily, but a weekly basis, some pretty phenomenal ahas of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I can do that, or it's possible to do that. I just think that it's silly for us to focus. And if the owners if OpenAI, who have developed ChatGPT, have discontinued their own model because they said it's not reliable, I think that, along with the headline of the article is, it's easy to fool ChatGPT detectors. So, and you found that with your own testing as well.
Yeah. And I also would say too that you don't need to look that far on student social media. Obviously, TikTok is a good place to find this information, but so are the other social media places. You can look for pretty good advice on evading AI detection. And the thing about this is that the students that are looking to, and I'm going to put this in quotation marks, cheat, right? In a lot of cases, aren't looking for an A. They're looking to turn something in that's good enough so they can just be done with it, right? And there's a whole other discussion we can have of that. But one of the pieces of advice is there are online websites that will go and take your essay and replace 25 words with synonyms of those words in order to try to evade the model. And a lot of those have been very effective in doing that. And I've heard people say, "Well, I read that and it's terrible writing." Well, that student doesn't care, right? The person that's using that tool for that reason is really just looking to for whatever reason, good or bad, get something turned in and done. But this other article, and I don't think we talked about this last week, and if we did, Dr. Fryer,
Nope,
please
we didn't.
stop
We
me.
didn't. Nope.
So this is from eCampus News. And I feel really weird being so aggressively pushing back on this gentleman's essay. But this is Dr. Stephen Bowell, who is EDD and PhD. So he's got the double doctorate, and he is a faculty member of Winona State University, and he's in the Ed Leadership Department. And he basically says that, here's 6 tips to detect AI-generated work. And I'm like, and I read that the thing is like, well, okay, what do you mean? Well, here are the things he's talking about. Look for typos.
Was
right?
this a journal article that he submitted 4 years ago to try to get published?
Well, yeah, bizarre, right? AI-generated text trends do not include typos, and such errors that make our writing human are often a sign that the submission was created by a human. There are so many things wrong with this that I don't even know where to start. But first, there are typos in ChatGPT and Claude output, and I know that because I played with the tools a lot over the last 8 months, and I can tell you that it's not frequent. But I mean, there are typos in AI. But more importantly, we're now saying that if a student diligently edits their work and creates a typoless paper, right, that somehow that's suspect. And I cannot begin to describe how problematic it will be if a teacher busts into, what's the term? Slides into your DMs, slides into an email to a parent and says that, Priscilla Perfect, a student, is clearly using ChatGPT because there's no typos in there. Well, I've worked with students in my teaching career that even if I diligently looked for typos, never found any because they were both solid writers, but more importantly, they were completely committed to making no errors in their papers and would painfully go through word by word. But then instructors should look for unusual or complete phrases that a student would not normally employ. Well, good luck with that, right? And the more diverse your learners, the more likely is you are to do that. And then current generative AI tends to be based off of training materials developed no later than 2021. So that text that references 2022 or more recent events is less likely to be AI generated. And it's like, well, I guess if you're looking for a recipe on how to trick a teacher that uses this advice, you just refer to something in 2022 and you're good. But
or you turn on the plugins in ChatGPT 4 with the links and you're good. You've
go to Bing.
You've got live, or use Bing or use another tool.
Yeah. So I just, I get it. We're all scrambling for answers here. And I really do believe that no one's going to come save us on this. We have to do this ourselves, right? In education, there's not time to have a long process to this. This is a today problem. And it's a problem and also an opportunity, but let's not take easy answers to this, because that's what I felt like that article was full of easy answers. So I apologize to Dr. Bowell if to push back, but I just think that this advice isn't really useful in this context.
Okay, I'm going to slip in 2 quick space ones, and then we may have to geek of the week.
Let's do it.
I know Eric's a space geek, so I love the title of this. This is Reuters from September 7th. Japan launches moon sniper lunar lander Slim into space. Mark Wagner, who I also follow on LinkedIn as well as other places, is really into space education. And he was posting today, both on Facebook and LinkedIn, about how something like 93% of school-age children report that they're interested in space and love space. And so this is a real opportunity of some cool stuff to share. India just landed successfully on the south pole of the moon within the last 2 weeks. Russia just tried to land on the moon again, crashed, put a new crater on the moon that we've actually, photographed. Now Japan has launched this mission, and they're calling it the Moon Sniper because they're going to try to get into the exact spot where they want to get. And obviously this is, it's rocket science. There's a lot of technology involved in this, but there's a lot of benefit for sharing this and talking about this with students. And so the other one that I would mention, I saw this was trending on Twitter yesterday. SpaceX was down for a while. So The Verge reports today that SpaceX says Starlink network issue has been resolved. I don't think there's anything in this article about hacking, but that was the first thing that I thought, because if you're not aware, there's a big war going on, and it's not just in the Ukraine between Ukrainian soldiers and Russian, soldiers and contract mercenaries. It's in space, and it's in cyberspace, and so it's a big deal. And so anyway, I thought that was interesting. Did your parents ever get Starlink, or do you all have Starlink yet?
My in-laws did. Yeah.
Your in-laws did. Have they been happy?
Yeah. Very, very much so. Yeah. I mean, there's occasional funkiness, but it's been, and considering the alternatives, it is next level awesome.
Yeah, we stayed with a friend in Colorado this 2 weekends ago, I guess, and they're at like 9,500 feet on the backside of Pikes Peak, and it's been a game changer for them to be able to have SpaceX. So anyway, couple quick space articles there. So much.
Well, sir, somehow we ended up at the top of the hour again.
Do you want to do the text expander? Because that's right.
Yeah, let me do that one just because I love the tool so much. And their vice president of product acknowledged me on Twitter today. So a text expander, by far, of all the tools I pay for, this one would be the last one I'd give up because I use it so much. A relatively close second is Grammarly, and then everything else is far behind. But they are bringing up a new experience for Text Expander for Chrome. And if you are using Text Expander on a desktop operating system, so I'm talking about Windows or Mac, the desktop app is good. The text expansion Chrome plugin is good enough, but not great. And part of it is that you're just designing around the limitations of being a browser-only plugin. But they have what they're calling a brand new experience coming to Text Expander for Chrome extension. With a new look and expanded capabilities. Text Expander for Chrome will take you to the next level of productivity. And basically, it is seamlessly integrated with desktop apps. So when I'm on a Chromebook and I go back to Mac, sometimes there's conflicts because if I have the plugin and the app running, there can be sometimes issues. But that you get the full experience now without the full effort, seamless knowledge sharing. You can edit snippets right from your browser bar and then share them with the rest of your team right away. And it's going to be a much more proactive experience, it sounds like. And again, Text Expander is just gold for me. And also in the age of AI, where I now have 6 or 7 prompts that I have in Text Expander, so that, for example, I frequently use one that's basically evaluate this email for tone and clarity and wordiness. And, I could type that every time, or I could type .ai email, which is what my shortage is, and then types out my thing for me. And that thing I talked about earlier with workflow is also in text expansion. So, yeah, super great.
If you want to see, back in the day, Bob Sprankle, Cheryl Oakes, and Alice Barr would do their Geeks of the Week at the main Actum conference. But Mike Augustinelli and Jason, what do you all call it when you do your SmackDown?
30 and 50.
Yes, and they do it at the NCCE conference and probably some other places too. So
yeah.
Anyway, if you're into amazing workflow hacks and software that changes your life, then look no further than Dr. Neiffer and Dr. Augustinelli. Does Mike have his doctorate now too?
He has his EDS, so he is.
What is an EDS?
It's education specialist.
Okay.
Yeah, education specialist. So it's specialist Augustinelli, but
there you go.
It's funny because a lot of people call him doctor, even though it's not that degree, and he's like just shrugs his shoulders. So
yeah, that's whatever. Okay. All right. Well, shall we Geek of the Week it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Hey, if you're our third live viewer tonight, you can say hi and let us know who you are. You can stay anonymous if you want to. All right, you want to go first? You want me to go?
Yeah, this is just a really quick, silly one, but a colleague of mine at work showed me this today, and I've already had 20 minutes of fun with it. It's called Super Meme. It's supermeme.ai, and you get 20 of free ones a month. And to pay for the pro version, which is unlimited meme generation, costs you $10 a month. I am not a candidate for unlimited meme generation, but I've played with it already, and just the 20 fake ones I get, or I'm sorry, the 20 free ones I get, and you just input text and it creates memes, and it's pretty funny and accurate. So I very much enjoyed the tool, and who says the AI stuff has to be serious? It can be a little bit silly too.
Absolutely. Well, my Geek of the Week are my AI guidelines for my students. I created these last week. And as I mentioned earlier, today I watched Eric Kurtz, and I have this linked at the bottom of the document. His webinar is called Artificial Intelligence Natural Misuse, Managing AI in Schools. And of course, he suggests in the video that you take whatever you write in terms of your AI guidelines and see how ChatGPT or whatever your AI tool of choice is can improve it. And I did that. So this has been a real common workflow for me is I'll write something and then I'll ask ChatGPT to improve it. Yeah. So lots of different ways that improved it, but I just kind of organized it between AI use guidelines, image guidelines, and suggested AI tools. I posted into Eric Kurtz's Facebook group that he has, Control Alt Achieve is the name of it, that about legal and ages, because I teach middle schoolers. So most of my kids are not over 13. They can't use ChatGPT or Claude or most tools legally. Now, Padlet we license, and it has a I can't draw feature. And that is where most of my students so far have been gaining some experience, which has been wonderful. We've had some great, dialogue. And so some of those image guidelines, like number 4, no bathroom humor, come from the fact that I've got middle schoolers generating some images, and we need to filter ourselves and then also just in terms of avoiding controversy, steering clear of politically disrespectful, controversial images. I mean, we've had that. And one of the things I've been surprised about, because I've heard of some generative AI tools not allowing you to put well-known celebrities or political figures or others in, is you can in Padlet. And so we've got, Elon Musk and Donald Trump and Joe Biden and things like that. And I'm, I want kids to have freedom, and I want them to be able to experience the power of, turning their text into words. But at the same time, I'm encouraging them and actually requiring them not to be disrespectful, and to not put things in there or create things into our Padlet which are politically controversial. But I love it. I'm requiring that they log in, so we have accountability for who's creating what. If there's something anonymous in there, I delete it. And so anyway, those are AI guidelines, and would love any feedback someone might have. And I think I mentioned, I think last week on the show, we were at the Air Force Academy for our daughter for Parents Weekend, had a chance to hear the generals give some briefings and answer questions. And the dean, I asked a question about AI, and she explained that they were being instructor specific with their guidelines. And I think that's a great way to go. It's going to look different in a coding class for high school or middle school than it's going to look at in a creative writing class. And in that webinar by Eric Kurtz, this is a long geek of the week, I guess I should apologize, but he does a great job asking, what does it mean to cheat on a paper? And if you've been listening to our show for a while, you've heard us talk about this, right? Just asking it for ideas, helping brainstorm. There's all these different things. And so to just have a bright line to say, no, you may not ever use it for anything, I think it's a lot more nuanced than that. And so, guidelines are helpful. So I'd love to know what other folks are doing for guidelines in your context.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that we need to be doing as teachers and instructors today.
And I just added Dr. Fryer's AI guidelines to my document, which I keep a running document of stuff for teachers and educators that I shared during my presentations. And the other person that's done really good work here is Alice Keeler, popular Google focus person. And she wrote a really good document about AI use in an English class and kind of what is there. The other thing is that there's starting to become some, I think, really interesting models, because you don't just want to give rules to kids. You want to help them follow them and understand them, right? That's an important part of technology ethics is not just knowing the rules, but being able to understand and utilize them. So people that are using, green light, yellow light, red light imagery for what you can use and what you can't. Rachel Martin, who is at Carroll College and is working with faculty there, their document for this is yes, no, maybe, right? Which I think is also, it seems like a simplistic framework, but it's very powerful from the standpoint of, helping teachers and professors understand that you got to draw a line here. And there may be a lot of things with maybe, but there's clear yeses and clear nos as well. So at risk of having This Week in AI extended in the next hour, this is the EdTech Situation Room. We're a once-a-week podcast on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, somewhere in the middle of the night UTC. Hey, we hope you join us live. We're on YouTube and Facebook. Check us out on Twitter, EdTechSR, and Facebook, and other places where you can find us on social media to find out the link of the week to check us out live. If you can't, we're always where finer podcasts are aggregated, and also at our website, edtechsr.com, where you can download a tiny MP3 of our show and listen to it in kind of an old-fashioned way. We hope you have a good week. Stay safe, stay savvy. We'll see you next time on the EdTech Situation Room. Good night.
AKA This Week in AI.